It's an interesting idea, and it's one that I've been intrigued with, and in fact does have a sense of a possible evolutionary component. I'm going to play a clip of an animation, and Dan, unless you were going to, of a bit of research that Dan and I collaborated with, together with Vinod Menon in Menon's lab here. So this is a study that was done. This group that you see here is this is an animation that's done as a result of a study done on non-musicians, people who have no training in music whatsoever, listening to music that they are not particularly familiar with. And the purpose here is to look at the role of event segmentation. What happens in brain processing between, as one phrase or one movement comes to the end and another starts. So we're going to count down to the phrase, to the segmentation boundary. This is a boundary between movements. So I'm going to play it once more. It's a symphony by William Boyce. And what you notice is the significant amount of activity that happens. First of all, there are two areas of activation. One happened first, and the other seemed to trigger the other activation. This is where Dan and I can comfortably part company, because I'm not a scientist, so I can conjecture here wildly, and Dan is a scientist, so he can't. So I'm going to conjecture what I'm seeing here. So there's one network that starts here, which is predicting the segmentation boundary. One of the interesting things you notice when you see this, it's been seen by hundreds of thousands of YouTube viewers. So, so if you want to see it again, you'll catch it there. One of the things that you'll notice is that as the phrase begins to come towards an end, but before there are any really overt musical cues that the phrase is ending, that network, again, these are unskilled, untrained listeners, pops in that seems to say we're coming to an end. And that network that's predicting the segmentation boundary then triggers this other network that in Vinod's terms integrates memory and expectation. So it's deciding what to write to memory and is building a set of expectations. So first of all, there are two interesting things. There are three interesting points. One is that the prediction for a segmentation boundary happens very early on in the game and happens whether you know about music or not. Second, there seems to be a lot happening at that segmentation boundary. In fact, much of the processing that's happening is happening in the space between, which raises the whole issue of silence, the role of silence. And third, if we go back to Minsky's conjecture that we enjoy playing with sound as a way of learning about time, this is a perfect animation of that. This is a perfect description of that process. Is that totally out of lunch? Okay. So
I couldn't have done it as well myself.
So let me now wrap up with a couple of statements about timbre. So we have a statement about expectations. Now let's look at timbre. So timbre is that quality of sound that is not pitch or loudness. Isn't that an amazing definition? That's the ANSI definition of timbre. So it's a definition by negation. So we know what timbre isn't, but we don't really know what timbre is. Well, if we think about music as the universal language, maybe we should start by thinking about what's universal, both about timbre and both about expectations. So here are some timbre universals. One is the idea of sensory dissonance. And I wrote a caution to myself because this is a really ugly sound, so I will not play it. Class notes. So this is, I'll give you an imagination of the sound. The sound is blackboard. Right? And that response, the response of chills at the timbre of, at the very thought of scratching on a blackboard, is really an amazing statement about the universal sense of sensory dissonance. Loudness is arousing, screaming is sensory dissonant. There seems to be, on the other side, a universal sense of sensory consonants. Our colleague David Huron loves to talk about the sound of cute, which seems to be universal. And if I ask someone what cute is, typically people go like that, and they sort of shake the resonant cavity of cuteness. The sound of smiling is my favorite example. When one gets a phone call and the person is smiling on the other end, you know that they're smiling before they say a word. There's some very subtle acoustic cue about just the air coming out of your mouth when you're shaped, when your mouth is shaped like a smile. There are many other examples. We might go back as we talk about these. Expectation universals. Well, we all cross-culturally seem to be locked into a sense of beat and tactus. Again, another David Huronism is the idea that lullabies there seems to be a universal pattern of attention and arousal with lullabies. We seem to laugh at incongruities. We all cross-culturally seem to suffer from earworms, or this idea that a musical snippet might enter our minds and we can't get it out. We're kept up at night because of it. I'm going to skip over that, but I won't. I'll just point out that I make my class sing this all the time, and something very interesting happens when group singing, which is at this note and this note, there seems to be a consistent 50-50 split about what the right note is. And that says something about schematic expectations. And both of those interpretations, both the error, quote unquote, and the correct note, quote unquote, are equally plausible as being correct or errors in both of these cases. And so this is an interesting case where schematic expectations are divided, and what the composer wrote doesn't necessarily hold water with what at least 50% of how people hear it. This is a minuet by Berger, the perfect piece to dance to. And minuets are, in fact, a wonderful way to study music cognition, because there's this whole body of literature that was built to be perfectly, with a high degree of expectation. One has to know what's coming in order to dance. So along comes Haydn, who wrote the anti-minuet, as Hans Keller called it, and I'm just going to play a few clips of openings of string quartets, minuets. So here's our sense of three, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Uh-oh, our phrase has gone beyond where we should be when we make that big turnaround. So one is an extended phrase. Here's another. Well, here we have a sense of 3, but we have a canon, and we have this split personality of the video. Where should we be dancing? Here's another. Now, where are you going to put your foot down on this one? The sense of downbeat here is entirely subverted. And finally,